Men can't articulate their own point of view. Men are lost, confused, helpless. Men need a fat, disabled, queer, Latina feminist to tell them what they actually think. As we've been following on this show over the past several months, the Democrat Party has a big problem. Well, they have quite a few big problems, but the biggest of all politically is that men, young men in particular, hate them. As everyone at this point knows, male voters skew heavily to the right, and the gap is widening by the day. Democrats are aware of this problem because it's the kind of problem that's very difficult to miss, so difficult to miss that even the Democrats haven't missed it yet, or at this point haven't missed it. But unfortunately for the Democrats, they have no idea how to diagnose this problem, and they haven't the slightest clue about what sort of prescription might help treat it. Fortunately for the rest of us, their clumsy attempts to grapple with the issue are often quite amusing. Even more amusing to see what sort of experts they call in to help them navigate this crisis.
Matt Walsh absolutely goes off in this segment, calling out the Democratic Party's clueless attempt to win back young men by putting forward a self-proclaimed queer, disabled, plus-sized Latina feminist as their voice of masculinity. This video features Olivia Juliana, an activist who checks every single identity box except for understanding actual men. And Matt doesn't hold back. He exposes the left's complete detachment from reality, twisted messaging, and man-hating ideology, while breaking down exactly why men are rejecting the Democrat Party in droves. So let's dive into the delusion.
Now, we know the Democrats are big fans of experts, and we also know that they tend to consult experts who don't know anything about their subject of expertise. This has especially been the case when it comes to the Democrat Party's man problem. So, last week, we talked about David Hogg, who went on Bill Maher's show to offer his analysis, which was predictably clueless and out of touch. After all, what does a scrawny 95-pound gun control activist know about masculinity? Is it possible to think of anyone less qualified to speak for or about the men of America? Well, that question may seem rhetorical, but the Democrats took it as a challenge because they have, in fact, managed to find someone less qualified to speak on the subject. Someone who, in the contest to be the most out of touch on this issue, would figuratively eat David Hogg alive, and perhaps literally. This week, a Democrat activist and podcaster named Micah Irfan invited a woman named Olivia Juliana to explain how Democrats might win back young men. Now, Olivia is a 22-year-old far-left activist and influencer, a rabid pro-abortion feminist, and severely overweight. And I mentioned that last point not to make fun of her, but just to emphasize that this is a person who, on the surface, checks precisely none of the boxes that would make her resonate with young men. She projects precisely none of the qualities that men instinctively respect or find appealing. And on top of all that, she's also apparently a lesbian. Her profile on the website for the National Union of Healthcare Workers, don't ask me why she has a profile there, says that Juliana, quote, identifies as a queer, plus-size, disabled Latina. Again, this is a personal bio seemingly designed in a laboratory to be as off-putting to men as possible. And yet, here she is pontificating about men. But let's not judge a book by its cover, even though you definitely can judge a book by its cover, especially when the cover says queer, plus-size, disabled Latina. That's a book that's bound to be full of nonsense, but let's read a few pages anyway. Here it is.
I think the Democrats have a really bad problem of every time we message to young men, we frame it in a way that is wrapped up in the same principles that we critique. We critique the patriarchy. We critique the way that men have higher hierarchy and power structures. And then we message to them as if not only is that the reality, but that they have to continue to be like that. So the example I use in the article is the issue of abortion. When we message to young men on abortion, or men in general, we do it from the position of, well, real men protect women. And if you care about the women in your life, you should be pro-choice. And that might be true. That is true. But we don't come at it from the approach of this is the reality that young men face about that issue. Because it's entirely possible that a young woman in college gets pregnant unexpectedly, and that could upend her life if she doesn't have access to abortion care. But it's also entirely true that the young guy who gets her pregnant, now he's on the hook to not only take care of this child that could be him, that could be coming into the world, but also to take care now of the mother of his child.
Let me cut in here for a moment. So Olivia, the plus-size queer disabled female expert on men, says that the best way to message to a man on the abortion issue is to warn him that if he doesn't kill his child, he may be forced to take care of his child. And notice how she actually refers to the victim of the abortion as a child.
This is what happens when the left stops hiding behind euphemisms. It's raw, it's brutal, and shows how anti-family their policies truly are. No wonder young men are walking away.
This is one of the rare moments when the abortion activist forgets the usual euphemisms and just comes out and says it. Yes, the child's a child, and if you don't kill him, you might have to take care of him. And Olivia suggests that this should be the sales pitch to young men. Well, I can only hope that the Democrats listen to her on this point, because the more honest the pro-abortion side is, the more they lose. It turns out that it's not very endearing or persuasive to walk up to a guy and say, hey, you're not fit to be a father. Have you thought about murdering your child? The only chance the pro-abortion side has to win any argument is to act like it's not the pro-abortion side and to pretend that abortion isn't abortion. There is no way of honestly talking about the intentional, violent killing of a baby without sounding like a bloodthirsty psychopath, as Olivia just showed. Now, there's more to say on that point, but Olivia has more to say too, and it only gets worse from here, so let's listen to a bit more.
I also think it's just so abundantly clear that the people who say these things don't actually spend time talking to young men. You know this because we know each other in real life, but I spend a lot of time on college campuses, and I
He
spend a lot of time with
loves young men.
I love young men. I love frat guys, and in that I realized, like, even the ones that identify as conservative are almost always pro-choice. They're almost always pro-gay marriage. You'd be surprised at the number of them who support Black Lives Matter. And so I feel like people just kind of lump them into this box when the truth is, again, a lot of them are with us on the issues.
Okay, first of all, this woman is not hanging out with frat guys. I don't think a single frat guy on earth has ever thought or said, hey, I know what this party needs, a plus-size queer Latina feminist. That's never happened, not a single time. And speaking of things that don't happen, there are not any young men who identify as conservative and also profess support for BLM. Okay, that may have been the case. There may have been some guys like that for a brief, unfortunate moment in 2020. But these days, that's a quick way to make yourself into a punchline. And support for gay marriage is also dwindling, especially among young men. And in fact, only a small minority of Americans generally, and young men in particular, are pro-choice, quote unquote, in the way that she means it. And keep in mind, to a devoted abortion enthusiast like Olivia, you are an enemy of reproductive rights, so-called reproductive rights, unless you support abortion under all circumstances up to the moment of birth. But that's a position that only a minority actually hold. Most Americans support at least some restrictions on the practice. And as we just discussed, that support dips further when the abortion radicals are actually honest about what the abortion is and why they care so much about protecting access to it. Let's continue.
What are the issues that are the most important to young men? One of the top issues consistently is immigration. If you actually talk to a young guy about how he feels about immigration, am I allowed to cuss on this?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they don't give a about immigration.
This is peak gaslighting. The modern left wants to overwrite reality, especially when it comes from men. You're not allowed to think independently. You're just supposed to parry back whatever the activist class tells you.
It's this idea of scarcity and competition of, if you're a young man in America, you are expected to go to college or go to a trade school, get a certification, get a degree. Then you're expected to get a high-paying job. And then once you get your high-paying job, you're expected to find your wife and to buy a house and to have kids and to do all of these things. And if you don't do that, then you're a failure because you are the man and you are the provider. And if you can't provide, then you're not actually a man. And so we set the Republicans specifically, they set this expectation and then they make it almost impossible for young men to actually do those things, whether it's through not raising minimum wage, whether it's through the price of tuition going up, all these different things. That kind of little nagging, insecure voice in the back of the head, that's where Republicans really push through that ideology and get to young men, is because then they can convince them, well, this is the person whose fault it is. It's not your fault that you can't get ahead in America. It's the immigrants who are coming here. It's their fault because they're taking your high-paying job.
Right.
Now we're going to we'll just sidestep. We won't even dwell on the claim that Republicans are making it hard for men to support their families by not raising the minimum wage, as if minimum wage jobs are supposed to be the kinds of jobs where you could support a family, right? Which is not the case. Minimum wage jobs are for teenagers working the cash register at McDonald's. That's what a minimum wage job is for. We all know creditors profit from your debt. They benefit when you're trapped in high interest payments. They want you drowning in personal loans, medical debt, credit card debt, collections, and expensive mortgages because financial strain makes you easier to control. It's time to take back control and fight back. That's where PDS Debt comes in. What I really appreciate about them is that they understand that your financial situation is unique. They look beyond just numbers to create a personalized plan specifically for you. There's no minimum credit score required to get help. Their goal is to help you save more, pay off debt faster, and put money back where it belongs, which is in your pocket. Their reputation speaks for itself. PDS Debt maintains an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and a perfect 5-star rating on Trustpilot. They've successfully helped hundreds of thousands of people break free from debt and regain their financial independence. You're 30 seconds away from being debt-free. Get your free assessment and find the best option for you right now. pdsdebt.com/Walsh. That's pdsdebt.com/Walsh. pdsdebt.com/Walsh. And anyway, here we finally get to the crux of the issue. This is why Democrats are drastically losing support among men. I mean, Olivia has helpfully demonstrated several reasons, but this is the big one. She acknowledges that, according to the polls, most young men say they care a lot about the immigration issue. But then Olivia, the mystical man whisperer, declares that although men say they care about immigration, they actually don't. She will tell us what men actually care about. Men can't speak for themselves. Men don't understand their own political positions. Men can't articulate their own point of view. Men are lost, confused, helpless. Men need a fat, disabled, queer, Latina feminist to tell them what they actually think.
This is pure ideological theater. The party of believe all experts now brings on someone with zero relatability to the people she claims to represent. It's not just a disconnect, it's an insult.
And what do you know? It turns out that men think whatever Olivia wants them to think. Isn't that a great coincidence for her? Olivia doesn't think that immigration is a problem. And that means that nobody else thinks it's a problem either. Even the people who say they think it's a problem, even the people who vote accordingly, don't actually think it. How can they think it? How can anyone arrive at a different conclusion than Olivia? It's not possible, Olivia says. And if you think this moment of obscene pretentiousness and presumptuousness is the worst of it, just wait until you hear how Olivia wraps things up.
America, or voters in general, when they're deciding who they want to vote for, they want a mom and they want a dad. Not to be homophobic, because there can be, same-sex parents here. They want a mom and a dad. They want someone who, at times of uncertainty, can bring them comfort and can make them feel like there's someone there for them. And then they also want someone who's going to be stern, who's going to have their back, and who's going to say the tough things that need to be said. And I feel like we try to offer voters comfort, but instead of coming across as like mom or dad, we kind of come across as like the aunt who you kind of don't like her, but she gives you really good Christmas presents. So like every once in a while you'll go visit. Like I feel like that's kind of how we come across as like, well, I don't really trust the Democrats and I don't really like them that much, but the Affordable Care Act was cool. And like, that's kind of the extent of it is how people feel about us most of the time.
Okay, let me step in here once and for all as someone who does actually understand something about the male mindset. And let me assure Olivia that no man with even vaguely normal levels of testosterone has ever said or would ever say that when he goes to the voting booth, he's looking for a mom and a dad. That is exactly what a man does not want out of a politician. We are specifically trying to avoid politicians who want to be our parents. And we certainly aren't turning to politicians for comfort or to know that someone is there for us. In my nearly 39 years of being a male human in the world and having had thousands of conversations with other male humans, I have never heard a single one of them ever say, yeah, I voted for that candidate because he's a really great parental figure for me, and he makes me feel comforted and seen. I've never heard that. If I did hear a man ever say that, it would be the last thing I ever heard him say, because I would stuff him into a burlap sack and I would throw him into the sea. Metaphorically, I mean, and also literally. So all of this advice from Olivia is terrible as expected, although she did manage to explain inadvertently why Democrats have so much trouble attracting male voters. But all of my rebuttals and counter arguments really aren't necessary. I could summarize the problem that Democrats are having with men with one statement or challenge. So here it is. I challenge Olivia or any other Democrat activist or Democrat official or Democrat talking head to do this. Please tell me one positive thing about men in general. Just one unique and positive trait that men on average tend to exhibit. Now, I'm not asking for a positive thing that applies to men and women equally. I'm asking for a positive trait that men exhibit more often or to a greater degree than women. Now, you can't say, well, that's impossible for me to say because we can't speak that broadly about groups. Oh, yeah, bullcrap. Because if I asked you to do that for women, you could do it in a heartbeat. If I challenge you to list one positive trait about women in general, you would say, oh, that's easy, I'll give you 20. Right? You would have no problem singing the praises of women. So, praise men. Just I mean, you don't have to do it. We don't need a whole chorus. You don't need to sing a whole song about it. Just one sentence. Give us one sentence of praise for men. Right? Fill in the blank. I think men are great because Phil, and it can't be, because they actually agree with me on everything, even though it seems like they don't, because that's all we got from that. Just one positive thing about men. Go ahead. Let's hear it. But you can't, can you? For all of your talk about reaching out to men, you can't even bring yourself to say one positive thing about them. You are as stumped and tongue-tied as you would be if I asked you to list one positive thing about white people. You can't do it. And that's your problem. It's your problem among so many other problems. And it's why young men and anyone else with a brain will not take you seriously. And especially will not take someone like Olivia Juliana seriously. And that is why she is today, finally, canceled.
Matt Walsh doesn't just debunk the left's pitch, he exposes the rot underneath it. They want control, they want obedience, but what they get is rejection, especially from the men they keep insulting. Hit that like button, subscribe for more bold reactions, and drop your take in the comments. Let's talk about it.